Hey, y'all. Welcome to the Reckless Optimist podcast. My name is Megan. I'm a family nurse practitioner with a deep passion for mental health. On this show, we showcase guests who have shown tenacity, grit, mental strength, and who embody the word resilience. A quick disclaimer before we start. This show is not a substitute for mental diagnosis or treatment. We do recommend that if you're struggling with your own emotional well-being, you see a mental health provider. I'm so excited that you guys are here. Let's get into it. Hey everyone, today on the show we have Michael. Michael is a sober mentor, he's a recovery advocate, and he's a life coach. I met Michael through the online circuit. We had done similar podcasts together and we started talking and found out our stories were similar in some ways. So I'm so excited for you guys to hear his story. On this episode, we do talk about moderating and how hard it is and the mental energy it takes to moderate. We talk about spiritual awakenings and books that we've read that have helped us come to those spiritual awakenings. We talk about his experience with rehab. We talk about, when he was in active addiction, he unfortunately went through episodes where he had to lie, and he was lying to himself. He was lying to everyone in his circle. And when he finally became honest with a nurse that he had when he was admitted to the hospital is kind of when everything changed for him. And I think that's such a beautiful reminder to always be honest with ourselves. We also talk about some suicidal ideation when he was going through some really hard times and how he got through that. We talk about a beautiful moment that he had with one of his children when he was in rehab and how that was another kind of God moment that changed the course of his life. His story is one of redemption, it's one of resilience, and it gives a lot of hope when you hear it. I'm really excited for you guys to hear this story today. Let's get into it. Hey everyone, please help me welcome Michael to the episode.
Hello, everyone. Thank you, Megan. Thank you for having me on.
Absolutely. I'm so glad you're here. Me and you know each other from the online recovery community. So we have done similar podcasts together and we just kind of have known each other through social media. I've always loved all of the content that you put out. You're someone that's really passionate about recovery, and I admire that a lot about you.
Thank you very much. Yes, I am very passionate about recovery. I could talk about a recovery 24/7. Like anybody that wants to listen to it, talk about recovery, I'm in. I'm like,
Yeah.
Okay, hey, let's talk.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
For the viewers that are watching the video, tell us a little bit about that hat that you're wearing.
Oh, okay. So this hat was given to me by somebody else in the recovery space. He also has a podcast that you and I have both been on. His name is Gary Menkes. He has the Begin Again podcast, and it's called RCVR. It's Recovery Brand. And anybody that's looking for some really the hats are awesome. He's got some yoga gear. He's got some mostly fitness, geared oriented towards fitness. But check out rcvrbrand.com, and if I'll try to get you a code so that you can go in there and shop and stuff, get a little discount for the plug.
Yeah. He sent me some stuff, and the website, it's the stuff's really sleek, really classy looking. I love
it's high
it.
quality. It's undoubtedly sometimes the online stuff, it's a little bit, maybe some people might look at it and be like, oh, it's a little pricey or whatever, but you pay for quality, and it's definitely good quality stuff.
Yeah, absolutely beautiful stuff. So we are going to start our episode out like we do every time with a quote. I have a different quote for every episode, and the one I have today is from a book that literally changed my life. It's called The Power of Now by Eckhart Tolle. Have you read it?
Yes, actually, it's one of the first book that I read of Eckhart's was in the beginning of my recovery, and I read A New Earth first because it had just come out. And then I read The Power of Now afterwards. I was just talking to somebody today about, he had put up a quote about something, and I was talking about it. It's a book I've read multiple times, over the last 15, 17 years.
His story is amazing too, how he came to write this book and be kind of this spiritual prophet. I'm obsessed with him. So if you're in recovery, you've probably read this book. It's one of our main books, but if you're not, it's just a great spiritual guide. But I read this book a few years ago. I was on a long plane ride, and I was like, let's dive into this book. Everyone's telling me to read this book. Let's try it out. So I'm here, it's a heavy material. You really have to think. I would read a few pages and then think about what he was saying. And I remember at the end of the plane ride, I was like, I think I just became enlightened, it was like a switch was flipped. And I do have to refer back to it because, you lose your way a little bit. But yeah, his content is amazing.
Yep, I agree. I do think it's kind of like a textbook almost. That's why I like A New Earth, because kind of the way that's broken up, and I can look at different aspects, and I can go into it and be like, this is very applicable to my life at this moment in time. Maybe I should start, digging back into this. Yeah.
Yeah, I think a lot of his work is about living in the present moment, right? And
Yeah, that's
so
it.
so often, especially people in recovery, we constantly are living in the future or the past, right? And so
Yeah.
we need to be reoriented constantly that the present moment is really all we have. And that's kind of like his whole thing. So I'll start with a quote. It's, like I said, from his book, Power of Now. He's written a few books, but it goes, "You are not separate from the whole. You are one with the sun, the earth, the air. You don't have a life. You are life." What does that mean to you?
Yeah, it means a lot to me because it's this concept of I am, and that's it, right? I am. We tend to put like labels on ourselves and we create these identifications of ourselves. Hi, I'm Mike, I'm a dad, I'm a recovery coach, I'm all of these things, or all of these things I did, when all of those things are just labels that I put on me, which, like, to live free, and I ask people this all the time in recovery, is how free do you want to be? By detaching from all of those labels, I am. So it is a very freeing spiritual principle. Like we were talking, like being in the present moment and just being comfortable with, this is me. That's it. I don't have to project anything else to people. I just live.
I love that. Yeah, I feel like it's like our true identity is revealed through consciousness and we fundamentally are life itself. And then it also makes me think of like we are the consciousness behind the mind, right? We're
Mhm.
the consciousness behind the thoughts. We are not the thoughts. And he says that like you are not the thoughts, you are the one who hears them. And I
Yeah.
say that to myself all the time.
I actually have to remind people of that all the time, right? Like, so I'm not responsible for the first thought. I'm not responsible for the thoughts that come into my mind. Thoughts are just random and they just come in. Now, if I decide I want to attach to that and just run deep into it, my mind starts spinning. I'm overthinking everything. I'm regretting the past, or I'm future tripping, all these things going on just based on this thought that I had no control over. So, like you just said, so if I'm not my thoughts, then what am I? Where did they come from? Like, I'm responsible to be the thought after the thought. So I am actually the observant
Mm-hmm.
of the self that is having the thought. And that
Yeah.
is consciousness. That's awareness. And like, I am obsessed with like self-awareness. Like,
Mm-hmm.
absolutely, that's my obsession now. Like drinking, using drugs, that used to be my obsession. Now, like, that self-awareness and that consciousness, like, that's my obsession. Because I do truly believe that, like, when living in a state of like addiction, we are living very unconscious lives. Recovery brings me to a state of consciousness. It brings me to more self-awareness. It lets me know who I am. It lets me know like how I interact with the world around me, what other people are about, the fact that what other people do is none of my business. I don't have control over what they do, so stay out of it. I can only control myself and the way I respond to other people. So yeah, like
Yeah.
I'm big, big, big on the consciousness and self-awareness and all that stuff.
I think it can help so many people, even just through like anxiety, right? Because anxiety is just like ruminating thoughts, bad thoughts, and kind of learning this whole process of, like you said, you're the observer can really help. I love the analogy of, I don't know if you heard it talked about in this way, but like as the baby analogy. So when you're born as a baby, you don't have a resume, you don't have an alma mater, you don't have a career, but you're you, right? Your consciousness. And as you get older and you age, you get all of these labels attached to you. So you're a recovery coach, you're a father, you're a lawyer, whatever. And those identities become you. You become the label. And then as you get older, maybe you retire, you lose these identities and your whole foundation falls apart. But you were consciousness the whole time. You were never the label. And that can help when you learn that kind of paradigm shift. It can help you so much through life.
These are things I wish I knew when I was younger. And it's like,
Yeah.
that's why I think it's important to talk about things like this and to try to like, and it might not sink in the first time people hear it, but the more times like that you're living it and, talking about it, a seed gets planted and hopefully like somebody grabs a hold of like an idea that was said, and then maybe they try to start to apply it to their life. And then that's like this blooming consciousness, that's spoken about, that Eckhart writes about, is like, we're on this, blooming, like the flowering, like there was a time on our planet when everything just started to bloom and it was colorful and all these things. Like, I think that we're on the precipice of that. Like in society, is like the more conscious people become, the better human beings we become. And the more like we respect one another, and the more that we're interacting with each other instead of like, just fighting with each other, the more that gets the more understanding there is. And then just the more kind of, all of the early teachers taught about it. It's like, just be kind to others, just try to, you be a better person and be kind to others. And like that stuff just kind of like, it's a give and take, I get what, I will receive what I give, so when I think that the world is against me, well, when the whole world's against you, it ain't the whole world. Maybe it's something I'm doing. I need to take a look at myself. What actions can I take to make this situation better? I can't expect other people, and I can't expect the world around me to, consort to my wishes. And that's what I did when I was drinking. I just tried to control the narrative and the world around me. And if they all just did this, then everything in Mike's life would be perfect. It doesn't work that way. And I had to come to a state of consciousness where I realized it doesn't work that way. You can only control you. People can't change people. I can only change myself.
Yeah. I love what you were talking about, how, coming to our own consciousness on the global level can be so impactful. I mean, it's kind of the whole butterfly effect or entanglement theory. If I work on my consciousness, that adds to the whole, right? And so, working on yourself can literally change the rest of the world. Like we're all interconnected in that way. And I think it's really important to remind people about that.
It's a huge ripple effect. Right? Like it's a huge ripple effect. That's why like I love doing what I do. Like I love working in recovery and trying to be like this vessel that can like maybe show other people that your life can change. There is a way out. Recovery is possible. You do not need to continue down this path. And it's not just that one person that may recover. Right? Like if I have the impact of helping one other person, who knows what that looks like generationally? One person that changed their life, how it affected their loved ones, their kids, their kids' kids. Like it just, the ripple effect is profound,
Powerful.
And even the people like maybe that those people, owed amends to, and they go out and they fix those relationships. So now those other people's lives have been mended too. It's like you said, it's like this ripple effect just by one person doing the right thing, how many lives that can impact. It's crazy.
Yeah. I love that. It makes me think, not to make our whole episode about quotes, but the other one is like the river remembers every stone, but the ocean forgets every drop. And so how like our lives are a cosmic blink, but they're also extremely powerful at the same time. The paradox of it all. But yeah, I could talk about this forever.
Yeah, that is a good one. I know that about you too, because I when I listened to your episode with Gary, and like you were saying like how you love like quotes, and I do too. Like I think that quotes can be very powerful. One of the books I love very, very much is The Alchemist. Like I love that book. That was another one that I read early in recovery, and I recommend it, to people that I work with in recovery. I'm like, it's an easy read and it's very, very powerful, and then another one I read.
Add that.
You should. It's short. It's a great book. Of all of the books that he wrote, I read a couple of them, but like that's the one that I recommend. And then Man's Search for Meaning by Viktor Frankl. That book is like
I'll add that one too. The other one I've heard that I have not read, because I've read a lot of them, that people have told me is The Body Keeps the Score.
I haven't read that.
Yeah, that's another good one that's similar. So
okay,
we have homework to do.
Yeah.
Okay, I cannot wait to get into your story. Just take us back. I mean, wherever you feel comfortable, take us to the beginning.
Okay, so I picked up drinking for the first time with the intent of getting drunk when I was 9 years old. I blacked out for the first time when I was 11, and then I drank alcoholically and abused drugs just like that until I stopped when I was 33 years old. So I had almost a 25-year career of drinking. There were a lot of things that happened, circumstance situations. I woke up, handcuffed to hospital gurneys. I woke up in jail cells. I came to in jail cells. I came to in the back, of police cars. Lots of wrecked relationships, DUI, just a lot of things, lots and lots of blackouts, like lost tons and tons of evenings. And then just kind of came to the next day and be like, woo, that was a heck of a night. Like when I was younger, I kind of wore, it was like a badge of honor. You know what I mean? Like I knew that I was going to go out, and I knew that I was probably going to black out, and I knew that I was going to have to like get the blanks filled in the next day. But then as you start to get a little bit older and you start to have responsibilities, these are probably not ways that I should have been living, yet I still was, right? And there were plenty of times where, people in my life tried to say, like, maybe you should pump the brakes a little bit. Why don't you try to, like, just scale back a little bit? And there were times that I tried. Like, I tried to scale back some, but then what happens is, like, when I'm scaling back some, like, I'm kind of sneaking some so that I can keep that balance of feeling okay, and then when I finally did kind of get sober and stayed sober, and like what we were talking about, like having this self-awareness and like this consciousness about it, what I realized is like the alcohol and the drugs were not the problem, right? They were not my problem. Like, they were my solution to the problem that I had inside of me. They solved the restless irritability and the discontent that I suffered from on a daily basis, this incredible uncomfortability inside. They took that uncomfortability away. Now, what was I uncomfortable with? I was uncomfortable with being right here, right now. Like we were just talking about too, like the ultimate goal is to be living in the present moment. So I was never really living life. I was always escaping from the moment, because I was plagued by things from my past. I was always worried about what was going to happen in the future. All of these things that I wanted or needed to happen, and just fixated on those things. I was never really focused on the present moment because I was just looking to escape it. And alcohol and drugs did a very good job of doing that for me. So like I said, I remember times when I was younger. I think I was like about 15, maybe 16 years old. And I had gone up to my grandmother and grandfather's house to mow their lawn the day after like a family picnic. And I remember my grandfather saying, I drank a little bit, maybe a little bit too much at that picnic. And my grandfather said to me that next day when I was, helping him mow the lawn, he was like, "Hey, bub, you need to be careful." I'm like, what do you mean? It's 7:30, 8 o'clock in the morning. I'm up here already. I'm helping mow the lawn. I'm like, what do you mean? He was like, you can see it. The second you take a drink, you can see it in your eyes. You're ready to go. Now, I didn't understand what it meant then. Here I am, just a young kid experimenting with alcohol, and like, most of my other friends doing the same thing. What he saw, because he had seen it in other people, is that I just have this broken off switch. Like the second that I start, it's like, whoop, something awakens within me and I am off to the races. I couldn't understand that. And I always thought that I'll stop if things ever get bad enough. Like if I really need to stop, I'll be able to stop. If I have to like pull back a little bit, I can control it. And there were plenty of things that happened along the way, in my drinking where fear would sober me up for a bit, like I had a child young. I was 22 when my daughter was born. I was 25 when my second child was born, and like 27 when the third one came along. So I had 3 children by the age of 27, which I was drinking heavily at that time. I had already gotten a DWI when my daughter was a baby. I had already, fled states a few times in my teens, like kind of escaping the things that were going on. Like, whoop, stuff's getting a little hot around here. I better move to Florida, or I'll move to North Carolina. And then I went back to Florida, and then I come back to North Carolina. And it was always because trouble was piling up. But it wasn't my fault, right? It wasn't something I was doing. Everybody was out to get me. I just need to get out of here. That's what I always thought, is like it was always something else. It was always some external circumstance that was causing these problems in my life. That what I know now is every time that I went somewhere else, guess who kept showing up? Me. So the problem wasn't all of these circumstances and people. The problem was always me. I just kept bringing me with me. So then I finally, when I got back to New York, I was 21, and I had gotten arrested a couple of times for underage drinking prior to that when I was in Florida, and then arrested again in North Carolina. And these are just like overnight stays. And then I come back to New York. I had to call my mom because I had no money. I was living on like my old college roommate's couch, when I left Florida after being arrested the night before. I just kind of took the bus, went to North Carolina. He was like, "Yo, man, you can stay on my couch." And so I stayed on his couch. And then after like a month and a half being there and getting in trouble again, I had to call my mom, and I'm like, I need to come home. I need to come to New York. She's like, "Okay." I'm like, "I have no money. Like, I can't leave, like I needed money." So she had to like send me money for a bus ticket, took the bus back to New York. And then like, kind of a lot of things, occurred after that. Had the, baby, and got a DWI when the baby was little. So there's always like issues going on around drinking. And there were plenty of opportunities where I probably should have stopped. And maybe had I gotten off the merry-go-round earlier, the consequences wouldn't have been so bad. I had plenty of people like in my life that were in recovery. I had a couple like an aunt. I had two aunts that were actually like in recovery, tried to get me into recovery. I said, I don't need that stuff. I will figure this out, and just more consequences and all those things that I kept telling myself, I'll control it better. I never was able to control it better. And then finally came a time when my ex-wife and I were going to therapy, and we had been going to therapy, like couples therapy, for like about a year and a half. And I liked therapy. And I've talked about this before. Like, I liked going to therapy because it felt like the therapist was on my side sometimes. Like it wasn't always me in trouble. It was like I'd share like, yeah, okay. And she had suggested plenty of times, like, Mike, why don't you try AA? Why don't you try doing something? And I was like, no, no, no. Finally, one night I was like, fine, I'll go. And I went to AA. It was the first time I'd ever gone. And I actually, like, when I went that night, we were at therapy, and I was like, you know what? I'll go to a meeting tomorrow. And she reached behind her and she grabbed a pamphlet book, and she was like, well, if you leave right now, there's a meeting over at the Brick Church that you could probably make it to. I'm like, fine, I'll go. Just being kind of like, defiant like I was. I'm like, I'll show you guys this stuff doesn't work. So I went, and it was pretty profound. There were some pretty profound things happened, in that meeting, which really made me question this whole like God thing. I had always felt in my life like I had turned my back on God when I was younger. I kind of ran with the idea that, I'm going to live the best I can. And, when I die, just put me in the ground and forget about me. And everything was a coincidence. That's how I looked at things in life. Like all of these things that happened in my life, they were just coincidences. Well, what happened that night was definitely unexplainable and like not really a coincidence. I was like, this is ridiculous. So it kind of like planted a seed, like maybe there's something here. So then for about like the next year, I kind of tiptoed around the rooms of like AA. I didn't do anything that AA suggested. I didn't really connect with anybody. I kind of went in a little bit late, talked to some people outside, and I left. I wasn't participating at all. I was not really trying to make this thing like a part of my life. I didn't do any actionable steps to make any changes. I just was trying not to drink. And for someone like me, just not drinking it's kind of like a ticking time bomb, because the further away I get from a drink, the faster the spinning is in my head and the tighter the knots are in my stomach. So I would drink occasionally, intermittently at times throughout the course of this year, kind of sneaking it here and there. I was pretending that I wasn't drinking and going to like, maybe one or two meetings a week. And at the end of a year, I wanted to kill myself. Like that's where I found myself. I wanted to die. And some things happened, and I was asked to leave the house again. And I left, and I went to my mom's, and it was a debacle. Like my mom was really scared because she kind of heard me say like, I just can't do this anymore. I don't want to live. So she was petrified. She was like, would you consider going to like rehab? And I had never gone to rehab before. And I was like, yeah, I was scared. I was kind of scared, like what was going on in my life. At the time I had a wife and 3 kids. I've got a house and all this stuff to worry about. And my thoughts were like, everybody would be better off without me. Like that's what kept playing in my head. And I had suicidal ideations, and I thought it was normal. Like I thought everybody had those thoughts. Come to find out, not everybody does. Like that's kind of what I found out in like recovery. Not everybody, thinks on a regular basis about killing themselves. And for me, it was like kind of a regular thing. I didn't think anything of it. But this time it was like really, I was in a bad place. So my mom was like, would you go to rehab? So I was like, you know what? Fine. Yeah, I would go. So we're trying to get me into a rehab. So I'm at our house for like about 8-9 days before they were able to get me in. So like every night that her and her husband would go to bed, I'm drinking. Like the second they go up the stairs, like I'm in the fridge, I'm drinking, hanging out, watching TV, looking on the computer I'm looking for rehabs, and I'm like, oh, I found a good one. And I'm looking at all these places. And after about like 8 or 9 days, my mom finally got me into a place because she was seeing me not in a good spot. So she made a phone call to the local senator's office, and he got me in. Like he got me into a place. He was like, we have a bed for him, have him there tomorrow. And so I get taken to hospital. It's not one of the places that I found online. And when I woke up the next morning there, it definitely was not one of the places I saw online. I'm on the 3rd floor of a MICA unit in a hospital, and it was not, there's no pool. There's no beach. There's no nothing. Like it's horrible. So, but when I got there, there was they brought me into the back. I had to wait for about an hour and a half in the waiting room. And then finally I get brought back, and they're taking blood tests and, piss test and, doing all my vitals and stuff. And the nurse, he asked me, he was like, when's the last time you drank? And I was like, a couple days ago, maybe. He's like, when is the last time you drank? And I said, this morning. And he said, there you go. For once in your life, why don't you just try being honest? And that kind of hit me because he was right. Like he was right. There were times in my past where my mom had sent me to a therapist and I lied my way through it. I lied to a lot of like people that were trying to help me in my life earlier on. I was always just manipulating the situation and lying my way through it. And this guy called me out on it. And I was like, okay, this morning. So then on the elevator ride up, he basically said to me, he was like, I asked him actually, I said, do you have any advice? And he said, yes. Remember why you're here. Don't get involved in all of the bullshit. He said, there is a lot of drama up there. Do not get involved in that. Focus on you, focus on your recovery, and remember why you're here. So I said, great. So I went upstairs. It was late. They checked me into my room. I got up the next morning. I was not very happy, when I took a shower and went down to the common room and I was like, this place sucks. Those are like, I'm already feeling like I don't want to be here. And there's probably about 23 people there at the time. Counselor comes in the morning. He's like, all right, good morning, everybody. He's like, everybody just kind of take a look around you. He goes, maybe 2 of you will stay sober after all of this. I was like, holy shit. There's like 2. That's it. 2 of us. I'm like, these don't seem like very good odds. Why are we here? Only 2 of us are going to stay sober. But I get it. You know what I mean? Like, I do understand it today. Like, if you're an alcoholic or an addict or somebody that has severe, alcohol use disorder like me, like it takes work. I need to be willing to put the work in if I want to keep this thing. So I was there for a few days and then like in recovery, I think everybody kind of needs a moment, like this pivotal moment or like a window of opportunity, which kind of pushes them to be willing to take the next steps and move forward. Well, I went in on February 12th. It was February 17th, 2008. And I was on the phone with my then during phone time, everybody's like standing in line to get the phone. So it's my turn. I'm on the phone and it's my son, my then 4-year-old son. And I was like, hey, buddy, what's going on? He's like, hey, dad. And my kids thought I was working, and I was like, how are you, buddy? And he was like, good. He's like, hey, you're going to be at my birthday party tomorrow, right? He's like, you know where it is? I'll see you tomorrow. You know what time it is? And I was like, I don't know, bud. I don't know if I'm going to be able to make it. He's like, no. You'll be there. You know where it's at. I'll see you tomorrow, dad. And I got off the phone with this 4-year-old that was turning 5 the very next day. It was his actual birthday the next day. And I got off the phone with him and I was like absolutely broken. Like I hung up the phone, I went into my room and I hit my knees. And like it was literally the first time in my life that I was 100% honest with what was going on in my life. For the first time, I actually realized that the things that I was doing in my life were not only affecting me, but they had a direct effect on the people that I loved most in the world. And these people were completely innocent of everything that I was doing. And I am having this effect on them. So I hit my knees because I had nowhere else to look but up. And everything that I had ever done wrong, it seemed like it was just this ultimate confession of cleaning my slate. And, and I'm bawling, like I'm like sobbing, like snot bubble sobbing as I'm like, these things are coming out of my mouth. And like the only thing, at the end of it, I just kind of said, if whatever you are, if you are real, please help me. And that's all I could say is like, I promise I will do everything in my power to stay sober if you just help me. And it was crazy. Like, I can't expect other people to feel what I felt at that moment. But when I say that everything felt okay, everything felt okay, and I stood up and like the tears dried up and I just felt 1,000 pounds lighter. And I ended up leaving that rehab I was only there for 10 days because my insurance wouldn't cover. So I ended up leaving there and I got out on a Friday night. It was snowing. It was snowing all the next day, in New York. We got about probably 15 to 18 inches of snow. I shoveled all day Saturday, so I didn't go to a meeting. And it was suggested that I get connected when I left rehab, that I should get connected, with some sort of recovery. So there was on a Sunday afternoon, there was a meeting like a little ways away. And I said, hey, I'm going to go to this meeting. And I went to this meeting and I met a man. This man stopped me on my way out of the room, and it changed my life. And what's crazy is that man was from the area, but he was actually living in the city at the time. And he just happened to be up because his father, they would sold his house and they were moving him into like a senior living kind of house. So he was just grabbing a meeting on this Sunday for the weekend that he was moving his dad. And this is the guy that like helped me get sober and stay sober. And like, there's just no coincidences, like, and that man is still a friend in my life today, 17 years later. It's just crazy. Like these things that we look at and seem to be coincidences of life. If I'm aware enough and if I am conscious enough, these opportunities are in front of us all the time. Literally every day, there are moments where we can have these experiences in life that are just uplifting. So like the more connected I stay, the more opportunities I have like that. And then like, for about 5 years, I worked a really good program of recovery. After 5 years, pretty much got back everything I ever thought I lost. And then I started to stray away from recovery. I just put it on the back burner. It wasn't something, I didn't drink anymore. I was just like, I got this, I'm too busy with business and life. But I kind of lost my connection with, God, a higher power, whatever you want to call it. I choose to call it God. And with other people in recovery. And for the next 5 years, I just became the same asshole I was when I was drinking, because I had no connection with other people. The only thing I was looking for was I was striving towards the next goal and things that I was looking to achieve in life. And I achieved some stuff, and, it was good. It provided things that were needed. At the 10-year mark, I was 10 years sober, and I'm losing my family, kind of is the way it went. Like, and I didn't see it coming, a marriage ended. I didn't see it coming. But I look back once I was conscious again, I could say, yeah, the signs were there. You know what I mean? Like, dude, how did you not see it coming? But, today I get to say, like, I got reconnected, and that was in 2018, and I got reconnected, and I have stayed connected. And in staying connected and getting reconnected and helping others do the same thing over the course of the last 7 years, my life is amazing. Like, and no matter what is going on, like, when I say my life is amazing, I don't mean I don't suffer from trials and tribulations and have obstacles, on a regular basis. There are things that I must face, but the amazing thing is that I get to face them from a different state. Like I actually, like if I stay present in the moment, like that psychic change that we're looking for, if I stay there in the present, I'm able to kind of overcome things and see opportunities within obstacles. And that's kind of why I like to stay connected today, is because I know what happens when you don't. That's kind of like the thing I try to share with other people too. Like, that I help in recovery is like, once I made recovery a part of my life and not something that I just had to do, like I just made it a part of my life. There are certain things that I need to do on a regular basis so that I operate at the ultimate that I possibly can, at my best I can. I wake up in the morning, I do my readings, I have my coffee, I do a little meditation, a little quiet time with myself, and then I move forward with my day. It's not just jump out of bed, go run, go, 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 and then the wheels are spinning and everything's going. And then when the day goes off the rails, as days do, I'm stuck. Like then I'm like, oh, deer in headlights. When I kind of start my day right, I get to start right, finish right. And if I start right, I have a place to go back to when things go off the rails. And then at the end of my day, I try to do a little reflection at the end of the day. How did I do today? And it's just being curious and honest with myself. How did you do today? And be honest. You were a shithead today. You owe some apologies. You can do way better. Like it's okay to do that. It's the only way I grow, is to see the things that I have done wrong and then try to improve upon them. And that's my goal today. Like I try to be a better person today than I was yesterday. Just a little better. I'm not trying to be better than you today. Everything else in life before was this competition of trying to be better than everybody else, looking for external validation from everybody else. That's not what it's about. Like if I'm just looking to be a better person for me, and when I'm that, I'm better to everybody else around me. And that's that ripple effect we talk about. The better I am for me, the better it is for all of you. Otherwise I can make people's lives miserable. Misery loves company. Hurt people. And when I'm hurting, if I don't change that state, I'm going to hurt somebody else that I care about. And I don't want to do that today. So that's kind of my story. That's kind of what's brought me up to speed to this point in life. And I have a good life today. I do. I just had my daughter had a baby, last July.
Oh,
So
wow.
it's amazing. She's about to be 9 months old next week, and she's beautiful. And I tell my daughter, I'm like, I used to think you were the cutest thing ever. I said, I'm sorry. She's got you beat. She's like, no, I agree. It's fine. It's fine. She's like, I had to walk before she could run. It's all good. She's like, everybody says she looks like me anyway, so I'll take that. But yeah, she's just, and it's amazing to see, like, my daughter and my son-in-law are just amazing parents. They are amazing, like, and they're so calm with her, and she's like this very calm child. Like, I don't know, it's just, they're in such a different place than I was, when I had her. They're a little bit older, but they got their shit together. I did not have, like, it blows my mind that the hospital will just give a baby to you. Like, if there was something to fill out, like, are you qualified to take this child home? I would not qualify myself. There's no way at that time. Like, yeah, dude, you probably shouldn't. But I thought at the time, I'm like, I thought I was this great, and I loved my kids. The things that I didn't mean that I didn't love them. I loved them very much. I was just incapable at times of being present in the moment, and I missed a lot. And it's unfortunate, but kind of that's just part of my story. It made me who I am today, and it makes me more aware to be as present as I can on a regular basis, so that I don't miss life. Like, it's kind of crazy to think about, but when you really think about it, like, and Eckhart Tolle talks about this, the only moment in life that you are ever truly experiencing life is this moment right now. That's it. Everything else is either a memory or some future tripping. The only moment that I'm actually experiencing life is this right here. You and I talking, having this conversation right now. The viewer listening to whatever they're listening to at that moment. That's it. Love it.
Yeah. So I love your story. I really, really appreciate you sharing everything. It's, interesting story. I mean, I want to go back to a few things that you talked about. One was, how young you were when you started drinking. I have a few questions about that. One is, was there alcohol in your house? Were your parents drinkers? And that's why, like, what brought you to alcohol at such a young age?
So I wouldn't say, like, it was kind of like the typical, kind of household at that time. It seemed like every one of my friends, their parents had a refrigerator in the basement that was full of, like, nips. Like, the refrigerator in the basement had Miller High Life and Jenny Cream Ale nips in it. And then, like, when the family and the friends, when friends came over the house at night, the parents were upstairs having a few beers and stuff. Nothing was off the wall. They would ask the kids to go grab the beers. We loved going in, getting the beers for them. But I mean, I sipped off of my parents' beer from a much younger age than the time I was 9 when I got drunk. It just so happens that at 9 years old, with the intent of getting drunk, stole a bottle of wild turkey off my friend's dad's, a kitchen counter, and we took it down to the back field and drank it from the bottle. And that was it. Puked my brains out. And I didn't realize, like, I think that, as a young kid, I kind of had, I say that I can identify myself and say that I'm an alcoholic. And the only thing that means is that once I start drinking, I have little control or no control over the amount that I take once I put alcohol in my body. That's all it means. And when I'm not drinking, I'm thinking about drinking. So if I put alcohol in me, I don't know what's going to happen. Like, that's the definition of it for me. And I have, like, these behaviors that go along with it, and, like, people call them, like, the isms of, alcoholism. So I had these, like, isms, these behaviors long before I picked up that first drink. I was secretive. I was, like, I had all of these, like, these character, I don't even want to say they were defects at the time or flaws. They were just kind of what I was, just as a small child, always looking to be, like, center of attention type stuff, looking for validation for things, a little loud, but very, very secretive about other things, and, like, kind of lied, to get out of things and stuff, like, just busy, and like alcohol, when I took that in, it was like, I feel okay. This stuff's all right. We're going to do this again. This is going to be fun. And it just made that uncomfortability that I had suffered, that I had go away.
Yeah. The writing was on the wall, you would say.
100%.
I had some other questions. So you had said that you had gotten into some trouble, with the law. I'm really curious, any of those times you got in trouble, did anyone offer AA, rehab, therapy, or was it just jail time?
I don't think so. The only time that I was, like, recommended, I had the option when I got the DWI. They said you can either go to AA and you can get your paper signed, for this amount of time before you're back in court, or you could, because I was applying for like a conditional license, like that's what I was trying to do. I was trying to keep my license. I needed a conditional license to work. And so the option was either do that, and then the judge will decide whether or not you get to keep your license for work purposes, or you can go to therapy. And then if the therapist signs off that he thinks you're okay to move after that. And then I had to do like the alcohol class and that stuff too, like 6 weeks or whatever, once a week. So I did that and I chose therapy. I was like, I'm not going to AA. They talk about God there. I'm not going to that place. That's not for me. So I did the therapy thing. And just like I said before, it's not hard, to like tell the therapist what they want to hear. I know what questions not to say. You know what I mean? Like, I know people that have gone to get jobs and they're like, yeah, I don't know why I didn't get the job. And they're like, like some of the questions like that they answered, I'm like, you put down what? And they're like, well, I thought they wanted me to be honest. I go, not if you want the job. Like, you don't answer that one if you actually want the job. I'm like, dude, they put your thing to the side right away. And
Right.
my friend's like, really? You think so? I go, 100%. You cannot be a drinker or of any type in that job field. And they're like, oh man, I'm like, so I knew what kind of questions and how I should answer these questions with these people. So it was easy. The guy signed off on me after 8 weeks. I went to 8 sessions. He signed off on it. I didn't have to go back, had my license back within a year. All good,
Yeah.
So like, and then the other times it was just like, same type thing, like more so asking questions like, you should get some help or you should get some help. But the repercussions that, followed for the reasons that I got in trouble, I laughed it off. I was young, and a lot of the times. And, some of the things they arrested me for, I'm like, you're going to release me tomorrow morning. Why are you even bringing me to jail right now? Why don't you just drop me off at my house? I was such an asshole, so entitled, talking to these cops. I probably could have stayed out of trouble if I just kept my mouth shut sometimes, but I was incapable of doing so in that state. I was like, just take me home. They're like, we're not taking you home. You need to do this. And I was like, and then I would be, defensive, and then next thing you know, I'm in the box and they're like, you can get out tomorrow morning when you sober up, and then they would release you. Sucks.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
alcohol wasn't the problem. That's kind of what I told myself. That cop was an asshole. That's kind of how I looked at it. Like, it wasn't my fault. That guy just wouldn't listen to me. That's the story I told myself over and over again.
Yeah. And when you had that switch is when things change. Yeah. I mean, I brought that up just because I find it so interesting when people get into trouble with addiction or alcohol or drugs, the first thing is, put them in jail. But really, we really need to change that modality. And really, these patients should be getting into some type of 12-step program, some type of rehab, some type of therapy. I don't know how to change that like on a global level, but I do think we have that wrong in many ways.
I totally agree with you. And I think it's I think over time, like since I was there, I think it has gotten a little bit better. There's still a lot that we can do. And based on what you're saying too, I think that one of the places that we need to see more people on the front lines is in like high schools. I remember when I was younger, like they do the DARE program, but it's fucking elementary school. Most elementary school kids don't want to do something that's illegal anyway. They're not thinking that way. Middle school, a little bit more. You can kind of like have some talks with them about stuff. But at the high school level, I think that you can probably save kids decades of suffering by like planting seeds within them, having people like myself and other people like within the community that go in there and really say and call these kids out. That's what I needed at that age. I needed somebody up there going like, go ahead, buddy, roll your eyes. I know what you're thinking. This guy doesn't know what the fuck he's talking about. Because that's what I would be saying. I get it. I was you. Just because you do well in school, you're popular amongst your peers and, everything seems to be okay on the, on the outside. The kid that's sitting out there right now, if you're suffering from something on the inside and you don't want to tell anybody else because you're afraid of what they'll think about you, call me. I won't say a word to anyone. We can talk about what's going on the inside. Why are you drinking? Because drinking's not the problem. Why are these kids picking up in the first place? Something is going on that they are uncomfortable with, or something happened that they are trying to escape from, and this is their medicine to do so. So we need to touch them so that they're not plaguing, their lives with just bad stuff. We can save so many people from like years of misery by clipping it, like, nipping it in the bud a little bit earlier on. Because that's what I think everybody has to dig into. Alcohol, it's not the alcohol and the drugs, guys. Why are they picking up in the first place?
Yeah, I think you bring up a really good point, especially like the stages of development, like Eric Erickson stages of development, like more impactful is that high school age than an elementary school age. So I totally agree with
100%.
that. And
Yeah.
having someone like you, like a, relatable guy come in and do talks, like that would be super instrumental. Yeah,
As
I
long as
agree
they
with
allow
that.
me to curse. Because I like that's like my precedent a lot of times when I like speak at places. Like
Mhm.
a lot of times it's like I give them forewarning. Sometimes I get a little passionate, guys, and I do curse. I think that it adds emphasis to what I'm trying to say. So if you guys
Yeah.
are okay with that, here we go.
There's a
So
time and a place where
yeah.
it matters.
I think so. And if you
um,
use it properly, like I don't even get mad at kids. If they use
mhm.
it right, like it was like, oh, that was well placed. Good job. Good job, buddy. You know, you
The
really
passion was
meant what you
there.
were saying. Yes.
Hmm. I wanted to also bring up the part in your story about your son. That was really beautiful. My question for you about that is, how old is your son now? And does he know the impact that that conversation had on your life?
He is now 22 and we have talked, about it at times. And I think he does know the impact that it had on my life at that time. It changed everything. It did. Like, and that's what, like, when we get those like windows of opportunity, those pivotal moments, there's one of two ways we can go with it, and like, that's why it's so important. I think that when we get somebody that's kind of hit a rock bottom, don't let them get up. Don't let them like, don't give them too much time to really think like, you know what, it wasn't that bad. Cause that would have been me. If something didn't happen and like I didn't start taking more steps and working towards it, I would have talked my way out of like continuing on with stuff. And I know that I would have been back in the same old boat. And I've seen it happen enough times with other people. But yeah, it's amazing to think my kids were so young and to think about when I got sober. Like, and I used to think about that too. Like, I'm thinking to myself, I'm looking at my kids at the time. My kids were like 10, 7, and just turning 5. And I'm like, I was already drinking at her age, my daughter. And I'm
Hmm.
like, she's such a innocent, happy kid. Like, how would I react if she was drinking at that time? What was going on? Like, it blew my mind to think like looking at my kids as just being kids. Like
Yeah.
I lost a lot of like think my childhood by doing that when I did it. Like a lot of my
Hmm.
that innocence of childhood was just gone.
Gone. Yeah.
Absolutely gone. And then
Yeah.
I had no coping skills with life. I
Hmm.
acted like a 5-year-old when anything like, that seemed to be, pushing back against me. I didn't know how to deal with that stuff. I dealt with it
They
like I was a child.
They say that the age you start drinking is where your emotional intelligence caps off. So for you, that would be you were a 9-year-old until you stopped at 33.
Yeah.
So that's where you had the quote
And I don't
unquote
even know if I
emotional.
had the right feelings of a 9-year-old. You know what I mean?
Right.
I would probably say I was more like a toddler the way that I
Mm.
acted. I'm like stomping my feet upset, didn't mom, like that kind of, I'm like either I ran the other way or I told you off. I'd verbally assault you and,
Yeah.
put it back on you, or I just shut down and just left, just
I think
escaped.
it's a good reminder for the listeners though, like you can literally change your whole life. I mean, you are not that person anymore. You're a
No,
completely different person. And I think that's so powerful and gives people hope that you can become a entirely new person.
I totally agree. Anybody that's listening that has gotten this far, you can 100% completely change your life if you want to. Like if that's the direction that you want to go. I can't emphasize enough that if you just want recovery half as bad as you wanted drinking and drugging, it's possible. Like if I put half the effort into my recovery that I was putting into staying drunk and getting high, it's a no-brainer.
Yeah.
It is possible, and it does get easier. I know that it's hard in the beginning, the uncomfortability. Best I can say is get comfortable being uncomfortable. Because the best thing about recovery and sobriety is you get your feelings back. The worst thing is you get your feelings back. These feelings are so foreign. I had no
Mm-hmm.
idea. I couldn't label them. Somebody like, well, how are you feeling? I don't know. I can't describe it. Like, I can't put a word on it because I've never really dealt with it. I couldn't say I was scared or frightened or, anxious or depressed. I just knew that I just didn't feel okay. That
Yeah.
was it. I just knew that shit was not right.
Right. Wait, talking about like feelings and stuff, like I'd much rather feel it all than miss it all.
Yeah.
Life of sobriety is feeling everything
I
in
love it.
all of its glory, and then life
Good,
with
bad, or
alcohol.
indifferent, all of it.
Mhm.
Like I
Yeah.
want all of it because even I can tell you this too. The worst things that I have been through in my life have been while I'm sober. but I got to feel all of them. I got to go through and I grew through each and every one of them. Listen, I have survived 100% of my worst days. And so have all of us. We have survived 100% of our worst days. And if I look for the lesson inside of that obstacle, that painful time, if I'm looking for lessons to be learned, I'm going to be only stronger. And there are so many lessons to be learned. And my God will continue to put the same struggle in front of me until I learn the lesson. It'll be the same one. You don't want to learn yet? That's fine. We'll just keep doing this. You like it? You know, because pain is inevitable. Suffering is a choice. So, I mean, as long as I want to, as long as I want to feel it, if I want to continue to suffer and not ask for help, hardest thing I ever had to do was to ask for help. First I asked for help. Like, my mom got me into a rehab and stuff. And then like, I basically kind of hit my knees and I was like, I need help. And then so it became easier to start asking other people, hey, what do you think about this? And I still struggle with that sometimes, but then there's this paradox. Like this is something that really hit me. Because like in recovery, like the whole purpose is to live a life of service, right? It's about giving it away. It's about helping other people. And it's in giving that I receive. So I'm always looking for opportunities where I can help somebody else. So when I need help, who am I to deny somebody else that needs to help someone else not to ask them for help? That other person, like, might need me to ask them for help. Maybe they're struggling with something. They need to, to be of service to someone. So maybe I'm just helping someone else by asking them for help. It made it easier for me to start asking for help.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think, I love what you spoke about, your moment where you fell to your knees. I had a very similar moment. Our stories are similar in some ways. I think that's, an act of surrendering your ego, surrendering, physically, mentally, metaphysically, and I think that's a big part of getting sober is just surrendering to all of it.
100%. It's like, I give up.
Yeah.
I can't do it. Cease fighting everything and everyone,
Jesus,
show
take the
me
wheel.
a better way. That's it, man. Take the wheel. That's like, I saw this t-shirt once and it was like, Jesus is my co-pilot. And, and it said like, I think he's in the wrong seat, which I love that, like he shouldn't be my co-pilot. Like, my man needs to be driving, let me sit over and just kind of come along for the ride.
Yeah, I love that. Well, we have made it to our lightning round of our episode. So I ask the same 5 questions to every guest, and you just give me the best answer that you got. Are you ready?
I'm ready.
Okay. The first question is, you are given 3 options and you have to do one. Shark dive, bungee jump, or skydive. Which one are you doing?
Skydive.
Okay. Have you done any of those?
Yes, I have actually done 2 of them, and I was scuba diving once and there was a shark down there and I would not choose to go on a shark dive because I was not happy that the shark was there. So like, yeah. So I think skydiving's awesome. Bungee jumping's a little sketchy, but the shark diving, I wouldn't do it like because, hey, let's go dive with a shark. Nope. He happened to be down there and I was like, okay, we're out of the water. Nope. Yeah.
Yeah.
Skydiving would be the one.
Yeah. So powerful. So freeing, Okay. Number 2, you're in a simulation. What music plays every time you walk into a room? So a song will play every time you walk into a room. What song is that?
Oh, I'm a huge Pearl Jam fan. So I think I would go with like Yellow Ledbetter. That would be great. That would be great.
I like that. A little 90s, right? That's 90s. Yeah. Okay. Awesome. All right. Number 3, what is your favorite Disney movie?
I've seen them all so many times. Like I had
You have
kids
3
at the
kids,
Disney
so.
era. The Disney era too. I think my favorite is Aladdin.
So good. Music was amazing in that movie.
And Robin Williams was awesome. Like he was just awesome. He was awesome.
Yeah, phenomenal, man. They actually talked about him at a medical conference I went to because it ultimately came out that he had Parkinson's, and that, played a lot into his mental health and eventually his suicide. But yeah, super interesting, man. Great comedian.
I love the fact that, and it goes to show though, right? Like this is what, like when they say like, this is what depression looks like. Most of the time, the people that are really suffering from depression, they're always smiling. They're always trying to make other people happy because they're trying to help somebody else not feel the pain that they feel.
It's so true. Sometimes people that need help don't look like people who need help,
Not at all.
Yeah. Okay. Number 4, what is something you're obsessed with?
Self-awareness, recovery. Like I am obsessed with recovery, 100%.
Yeah. I love that. To kind of piggyback off that question, what's your like self-care? Like what is some self-care stuff that you do in recovery?
Pray, meditate, help others, drink water. I used to, prior to like I had a really bad snowboarding accident a couple years ago. I used to go to the gym 5 days a week, and it's mostly calisthenics. I'm trying to get back into that because my knee is finally at this place where it feels pretty good when I'm on the treadmill. And while I was home in Vegas, I had finally started it again. I did like 14 days in a row, and then I had to come to New York, and I've kind of fell off a bit. But I think movement is very important. Reading a little bit each day is very important, kind of keeps the mind, like fresh. Being of service to others, just trying to be of service to another person in any way I can. Whether it's holding the door open for somebody, giving somebody a smile, asking somebody that looks a little bit down that day, hey, are you okay? Like those kinds of things like lift me up. That's like what fills my cup, So for like a maintenance, for me, it's kind of wake up in the morning, pray first, and then read a little bit of literature. And then I try to do a gratitude list every day, 3 very quick things right off the top of my head. Sobriety and recovery is always number 1. And then kind of the other ones, usually kids fall in there, and then loved ones. But it could be like, man, the coffee tasted amazing this morning. Could be something that simple just to be grateful for. So my gratitude list, and then kind of in my meditation, kind of ask for some sort of direction for the day. How can I be of most service, most useful, today? Please help me, refrain from being an asshole, try to help me meet situations, in a kind, understanding way. Try not to react and respond instead. Just little things like that to kind of set me up to go out into the world, because the world is a crazy place for someone like me. I'm very reactionary if I don't do those things. So that's kind of what I try to do. And movement's very important. I think a lot of people leave that out. Even if it's just 20 minutes of walking each day and then staying hydrated, you just feel better,
Yeah.
And I
And
try
you
to
bring
lay
up a
off the
good point.
sugars as much as I can. I try to, but me, I'm an addict. If I start on the sugars again, then I'm I just crave it. It takes me a couple days to leave it alone. And then if I can do it for a couple days, then it's just oh, don't pick it up. Just don't start with the sugars again, because you take a bite of that candy bar and you're off to the races.
Right.
It's true.
It's so true. They in studies and stuff, the sugar is just as bad as cocaine and other drugs and rats. I mean, it eats their brain. But I wanted to talk really quickly about the movement thing that you spoke about, 20 minutes a day. But if you do that 5, 6, 7 days a week, I mean, that's over an hour of exercise that you got in. So it really, the little stuff builds over time. So don't think it's not for anything.
Yeah, it stacks. That's what people don't understand. The little wins stack. And it's even if it's only 10 minutes, if you start out, you're only able to do 10 minutes. At the end of the week, it's literally a little over an hour that you did it for. So guess what? It's an hour more of movement than you would have done if you did nothing.
Exactly. Yeah. I love that. Okay. Your last question, number 5. What does freedom mean to you?
It's my favorite thing. Right. It's what I ask all the time. How free do you want to be? So freedom for me is just that diminishment of the ego, where I'm just not thinking that I'm the center of the universe, just trying to be right sized. That's freedom for me. Being right sized and in the present moment, life is good.
I love that. That's a beautiful answer, a beautiful way to end the episode. I can't thank you enough for coming on. I mean, you can feel the passion that you have for recovery, and to know your whole story and to see you on this other side. It's just super inspirational for me, and I'm sure our listeners too. So thank you for being a part of this community. Thank you for being passionate about it. And thank you for sharing.
Thank you, Megan, very much for having me. And thank you, everybody, for listening. And I hope to see you all again very soon.
Yeah. All right. Bye.